The way traditional basketball skills workouts are structured are nowhere near as effective as they can be. In a traditional workout, you have a trainer who is telling the player what move to make, what shot to shoot, and how many reps to do it for. When we do this, we are separating the action with the perception. So the action is the between the legs dribble, and the perception is whatever we're reacting to. The defender in front of us trying to steal it, our ability to hit the cutter in time off of a live dribble. In skills workouts, we isolate the action. This is usually in hopes of achieving the quote-unquote correct technique, or a common idea is you have to get the fundamentals down before you can work your way up to more difficult tasks. The reason I say this is less time efficient is because the action, a between the legs dribble on air, is a completely different task, a completely different problem to solve than it is with a defender in front of you with the problem or the task of hitting the cutter in time, seeing the floor to hit the open cutter. The actions are completely different. The role society plays in this, and the reason that getting the fundamentals down first is such a common practice in the skills training industry, is one, to be a trainer, you don't have to get certified. If you want to teach in a classroom, you have to get a certification. If you want to be a weight room coach, you have to get certified. The barrier to entry to be a basketball trainer is very low compared to other professions. So by default, what we do is compare training to other professions. So as a trainer, if I can break down this between the legs dribble into a 12-step process, here's how you internally rotate your hip, here's how you get the proper shin angle, here's how you effectively shift your weight to shift the defender. If I can break all of this down into a 12-step process to a player, what we do is compare it to other professions. So teaching, for example, in a classroom, the school system that we were all brought up in, it is very head-brain dominated. So the head brain is very analytical, lots of numbers, lots of logical thinking. In school, it's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of charts, a lot of graphs, a lot of diagrams. We all learned about the scientific method, which is a 5-step process. So with skills training being this industry that's kind of just up in the air, we don't really know what to make of it, comparing it to other professions. We naturally compare it to something like the school system. So when we break a between the legs dribble down into a 12-step process, it's comforting because it reminds us of what we know. The other reason why block practice, doing the same thing over and over again, is a common practice is because you see results quicker within the span of a 1-hour workout. So first of all, the reason you see results is because you're doing the same thing every time. So you have reference from that last rep to take with you to this next rep, which then allows you to self-organize and achieve the quote-unquote correct technique faster. The reason this is so popular is because we live in a microwave society. We want everything instantly. Because that's what we're accustomed to. I can go on my phone right now and watch any show I want, listen to any song I want to within 5 seconds. So it's, again, comforting to get with a trainer and then see results within 20, 30 minutes. The idea of achieving the quote unquote fundamentals first before we move on to other tasks, achieving the quote unquote correct technique. All of this sounds very logical and it makes very logical sense. But the issue is that we're thinking about it logically. When I ate lunch today, I digested my food and I didn't have to consciously think about that happening. My body just took care of it. I don't have to consciously think. I don't have to use my head brain to grow my hair longer, to grow my nails longer. My body just does it. So the body has intelligence of its own. We are, as human beings, genetically wired to use our body intelligence to adapt to our environment. From an evolutionary perspective, our survival depends on our ability to adapt to our environment. That is how we are genetically wired as human beings. When you put a player in a skills workout, that does not change. So, one approach is a player needs better handles. Let's break down the crossover, the between the legs, the behind the back, into separate 12-step processes and get the fundamentals down before we move on to the next step, whatever that may be. A more time-efficient approach would be to throw the player into the fire and let them figure it out. So essentially what you're doing is, instead of isolating the action, you are coupling the perception and the action. So you throw the player into the fire. Okay, here's a defender. You have a live dribble. You have to stay in between the lane line and the sideline, and you have to get to half court. You are throwing them into the fire and letting them figure it out. By doing this, it's going to be sloppy. Because again, you don't have, every rep is different, which is what variable practice is. Every rep is different, so you don't have that last rep as reference. Eventually, the player is going to figure it out. It may not be the second rep or the third or the 8th or the 10th or the 20th, but eventually that player figures it out because their survival depends on it.